Hello, everybody. This is Debbie Eno from Teacher Success Coach with another episode of Home Education Homeschooling with another of my guests from across the world who is going to share her journey with us as to the reason why she did the reason why she started home educating, what it's been like, what a typical day for her looks like, the ups and the downs of homeschooling. Remember, not everything are all up, there's downs as well. So she's going to share that with us. And why did she take her child out of home education? Why did she take her child out of the traditional school? And then we're just going to hear what what she's saying and what her journey have been like. Welcome, welcome, welcome. And thank you very much for accepting the offer to come on.
Thank you so much for the opportunity.
Tell us about you. What's happening?
All right. So I am Nina Seed, and I have my blog, Raising Seedlings, where I catalog everything that I'm doing with my son and everything that we have done, or at least I'm trying to put everything we have done in the last 8 years that we have started our home learning journey. And I have been home with him since he was born, and I've found various ways to work from home or to make work schedules happen while I am home with him. So it was 8 years ago that we really started the home education journey. And let's see, so as far as ups are concerned, I mean, I'm here with you at a library and my son is playing games with friends in the library, board games, and I am sitting on a couch in the library broadcasting to you. And that's a freedom that's granted only through home education because of the fact that we're starting at the initial cottage, and so the center of education in schooling systems is around the school, whereas at home and home education, the center of education is around the home, and then we extend to community out through there. So I'd say in a typical day, we wake up at around 7, but he's always been an early riser. I have an 18-month-old at home, and she's always has me up at 6 or before then. And we get our breakfast made by 8:30 at the latest, and we're into lessons. And usually we don't stop till 3 or 4, but I do a lot of interest-based things. So I don't have a curriculum that I follow, but I make one for every single subject through the interests of my student or my child, because I feel like all students want to learn very voraciously. They have an appetite for it. And if we as educators, whether we're home or whether we're in school, can find a way to help them know that that hunger is there and there's a way to feed it, they can really be the next leaders that we so desperately need right now. Mm-hmm. So that's what a typical day would be. Usually, so right now, he's very interested in the founding of America. So we're in Wisconsin, the United States. Mm-hmm. And so we have gone through and created a covered wagon that pioneers would use to travel through. But we have also made an Indian teepee and a longhouse and or called a wigwam, and all kinds of different Native American houses as well, to understand the complexities of history and how each and every culture can't simply be viewed as something so black and white, whether dark or whether, like good or bad. It can't be that way. It's always a nuance. It's always each person. And it's not like the government. It's like a bunch of people who represent something, did something, whether it was good or bad. And we move through that and use things like art, like dance and movement, like music, to connect each one of these topic points of interest that are his. But I don't try to hold on to, well, because he's in 3rd grade or because he's in 2nd grade, now we need to learn these things. Because usually when you get a curriculum, it's just another piece of oversight that's put together by a board of people who don't really understand how a human brain develops. You just understand what the state, or at least federal standards are for each state. And while that's incredible and plays a part in traditional schooling and homeschooling, the one thing that, or the one of many things that it affords is an ability to follow through with what the student is really saying they want to do. And then you can provide those resources to them as you go into the content, which I think every teacher does this as well, where they have hours of preparing one lesson for a half hour of time.
Yeah.
And so that's something that, I think is a similarity between the two as well. It takes a lot of absorbing all of this adult content and then putting it through a filter, and how can I deliver this to my student in the way that they will want to really latch onto it. And usually when you follow their interest, you see a seed turn into a blossom, sometimes just in a day. Other times it takes time and you water it and all that. So that's been our journey, is me as an educator and being involved in community members, or in community and being an active member, and my son through his own interest, and then me catering to that.
So why did you decide to become a home educator, to educate your child at home?
Well, when I went to school, I had a 4.0 GPA. So that means I got straight A's. School was very easy for me, but unfortunately school was very easy for me. So I never really read for pleasure, because for me, it was like, why do I have to read? It's like, I didn't like it, because the only purpose reading served for me was to study something someone else had told me to study. So I never found that spark of that inner knowledge and that inner hunger until I myself was 20 years old and in college. And while it came back around, I felt really sad that I missed out on that inner want to grow, because I knew that at school, all you had to do was read the book, memorize the dates, regurgitate. That's it. Easy peasy. So for me, it came really, really easy in like not every subject, but if I just applied myself a little bit, put in the time, studied, there we go. I know what you want from me. You don't want me to think, really. And like that was, I just went on with it. And, so for me, that's how it went. But then once that reawakened in me when I was in my 20s, I was like, well, what did that do? What are my interests, right? And it took me a while to come back to myself and to find that in me. And while I was coming back to myself, I was thinking, I don't want to do this to my children when I have children. Well, what are my other options, right? Because I didn't know. And so I looked into private schools, and I looked into charter schools, which are schools that are somewhat funded by the state, but still have a bit more freedom amongst parents. Sometimes charter schools have boards, and so those are non-elected boards. So sometimes it's less freedom for the parents. It depends. And so I went around, looked at them, spoke to people. This was just like when I was childless too. And I was with my now husband and just walking around, seeing what the world had to offer. And then I was at a mom group when my son was 1.5 and I was 22. No, I would have been 23, excuse me. But I was at a mom group then for my library, and I met one mom who was homeschooling. And so I asked her if I could just come see her and see how things go for the day. And she was more than okay with that. She was like, great, I'd love to make coffee. We'll hang out. I had no idea, because she was being so casual about it. And I thought it would be like, first we have to do this at 9 a.m. and then at 10 a.m. And so I went to her place, and she showed me exactly what they did. And they woke up, and, life isn't parties on the beach and margaritas all the time, and seeing how peaceful their breakfast table was. And she was a mother of 5, and this table was silent. Everybody was happy, and they were all eating together, and they were all reverent for the moment. And I'm not saying it was not chaotic before or after, but I am saying that everyone knew right where they needed to be, right where they wanted to be. And it was right there with each other. And then she opened up a book and started reading aloud to her kids. And I was just like, what? And it hit me right in my heart, because these were things that my parents and my family had never done. We were I was from a house of chaos. So seeing this was like, wow, this is incredible. It was just eye-opening for me. And that was the first time that I really moved into the thought of, well, I could do this, maybe, because she seemed like super for me afterwards, right? So seeing how dynamic their day was, where she would have each and every child, their subjects would all be grouped together in some way. So everybody's studying the same amount of history, even though mathematics will be at different levels, or everybody's studying the same thing to write about, even though their science experiments or their chemistry knowledge may be at different levels. And so in this way, everybody was engaged with each other. Everybody was there. And I noticed that the siblings were also really responsive to each other, where if the younger was struggling with something, the older would take that as an opportunity to be like, oh, let me show you what I can do, you know? And so it wasn't this like, haha, stupid, you know, or anything like that. It was an opportunity to like, for them to access the material in a deeper way because they now want to teach it. And so that was the first real inspiration, was having somebody be so confident, or at least confident enough to allow me to see what they were doing, that caused me to consider. So that's what inspired my blog, is that, you know, if I could show others how to do this, perhaps they would consider the possibility. And that's what opened it up.
All right. Thank you. So you say you have a blog, right? Okay. So you started the blog when you started homeschooling. Can you hear me? Did you hear me?
Yeah, I heard you. I heard you. It was, yeah. So when I started homeschooling, first I just focused on homeschooling and did my very best with that. It wasn't until we got into first grade that I started to log things on Instagram. And then shortly after that, I started my blog. And then now, so it's all kind of coming full circle. My blog went live in 2022 of this year, but I had been writing on it since 2019. So yeah, I mean, Instagram was really the first place that I started, honestly. Can you hear me?
Right.
Okay, cool.
Okay. Thank you. So what are some of the... Yes, I can. Very right. What are some of the challenges that you've been having in terms of, you know, homeschooling? Can you hear me?
The hardest part for me was reaching out to other community. And it wasn't because I didn't know that they were around. It was because I kept going to, so there's like community centers here, and those community centers will offer certain classes. And so I would go to the community centers, I would go to the classes, but all of these parents would be conventional parents. So they're not homeschooling parents. So they would be, you know, they had their kids in school. And so there wasn't a common ground that I could join with them in community about. So once I started reaching out to homeschool communities, and this was around when my son was 4, once I started really doing that, and that was right before we started really going hard in on homeschool. Once we started doing that, or once I started connecting with other homeschool moms, I realized that it was okay sometimes to have breakfast done later. It was okay to let the dishes set. It was okay to leave the laundry so you can get to things that are of a higher calling. Those things are okay. And that was the biggest challenge for me, was me. You know, we often stand in our own way, and I needed time to allow myself to breathe and calm down and know that I can do this. But you know, inspiration will find you, but it's only going to find you when you're working. So taking that time to work and reach out to communities, say hi to a friend who you know homeschools, work closely with them, because they're part of the community with you, and they want to see you succeed just like they want to succeed. And that's been the most healing piece of all of this, because I found a lot of myself through community work as well, and through teaching. So that's been my biggest, most amazing way to lift up, but it's also been my biggest challenge. Because moms will make themselves available, but you have to be the one to go. You have to be the one to go and connect with it and go. And at the end of the day, if you don't make friends, you can say, you know, I was here for my child. We have this memory together now. We had this amazing experience, and I'm going to take everything I can from it. And I know that I'm going to remember this from years from now and be proud of myself. If each and every experience can go like that, you will find a community. That's how it happens, right? So that's what I kept doing, and I just kept doing it and kept doing it and kept doing it. And now the blog has turned into this, and here we are together. And so that was the challenge.
Wow. Thank you. Do you follow a curriculum?
So I do buy curriculum each year. However, big however, I also will temper that curriculum that I get with the interests of my student. And I will also sometimes completely throw out subjects that are in that curriculum. But I will use that as a skeleton for how I want to build the next, so let's say it's like a social studies curriculum, right? And they want 4 crafts done throughout the unit study, and the unit study is 8 weeks. And they have so many independent reading books that the child does, or a read aloud book that you do together with your child, and that sort of thing. I will use that as a backbone for how I build it, because I know that there are teachers who worked hard for this curriculum and who built it, and I have reverence and respect for each one of them. And so I do my best to temper both of them and everyone, because again, I really truly believe each and every one of us has a spark of wanting to know more, and each and every one of us has the capability to know more. So the more we provide these opportunities, not only to our children, but to each other, the more that we're building, whether it's curriculum or, you know, something else.
Thank you. You said earlier on that you're an art teacher. So how do you use art in your homeschooling?
Well, I absolutely love art. I think art is the one subject that kind of goes above all subjects. So if you want to study Rome, you can study aqueducts and you can build them. If you want to study Africa, you can study kente cloths and the vast and deep cultures that are associated with them. If you want to study Ireland, you can study metal turning. If you want to study any of these, study theater, right? And so all of this can interconnect. And once I had that happen in my homeschool, I was like, wow, I need to share this with other homeschoolers, right? So now I host classes either based on artists and painting and just traditional artwork, or I host classes that are more so around a larger, broader spectrum, whether it's culture that we're trying to investigate or whether it's one particular artist. So that's been huge, incredible opportunity to teach through art and to use art as a tool to bring all of these different subjects together. With my son, when he was struggling with multiplication, what I did is I created different geometrical shapes, and we would, the 12-sided shape is called a decahedron. And so we would put the multiplication numerals or skip counting, like 6s and 7s and 8s. We would put those on the decahedron, and then he would roll it. And then, like, let's say it's 8s, and he would roll to 42 or, 40 or something like that. And then he would have to tell me the math problem associated with that. So it gave a visual to mathematics. It gave a reason why we're doing this. Why are we figuring these things out? And why are we challenging ourselves every day, right? Because we could just wake up and do nothing. But instead, we're transcending that as well. And so that aided so much when it came to the subjects that can seem more rigorous and like they're not fun at all.
Right. Okay. 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 Thank you for that.
Thank you.
Another thing is, why do you feel that you're qualified to homeschool your child?
Well, I mean, I'm my child's first teacher, first off. So, I mean, we teach them how to walk, we teach them how to eat, we teach them how to get dressed, we teach them how to behave with your friends. Nobody wants to play with the 3-year-old who's hitting and throwing things at everyone and doesn't have any guide to help move them through. Hey, we can express ourselves in a different way. It's not wrong you're mad. It's wrong that you're throwing things because you're mad, right? If there's no guidance in that way, well, of course nobody wants to play with anyone who's a bully, right? So it's the same way, except the challenges are definitely going to change, and they are going to be dynamic, and life is an occasion that we must rise to, right? But when you take that and really embrace what you're doing in those first 3-4 years, you realize that it's no small thing. It is quite a bit to just be there for them in that beginning time. And if we empower parents and teachers in what they do for the very young, I believe parents would be more involved, not just in home educating, that's just an aside, but even in the school system, they would be more involved. And that would be transformational.
Thank you.
Absolutely.
What example, right?
Yes, exactly. And
what time to what time? We seem to be having a delay. From what time to what time you start homeschooling your son? What time do you finish?
Usually we begin at 9 a.m., but we could go, honestly, so sometimes we're done at noon or 11 a.m. and he's ready and he's pushing through and he's got everything done. Other times we're going until after dinner and we have plans and ideas, and he's just, lit up and he's got sparks in his eyes and he's got ideas. And I follow that too. And other times we're done at 11 and we play with Legos together for a few hours. And eventually, most of the time, the play will circle back around to something that we've been doing together, right? Because play imitates life. Yeah. And so it's unpredictable some days. But when we finish early, I often find that that's an opportunity for play. It's an opportunity for dancing. It's an opportunity for art. And so I try to just do those things as if I would normally when he would be going to school and coming home, and I'd be saying, hey, let's do something together, right? Mm-hmm. So that's usually how our days go, though, is we start at 9 and we're done by about 2. So.
Mm-hmm. How old is your son?
He is almost 11. So he's very far into being homeschooled, but he absolutely loves it.
So he's never been to school, traditional school?
No, he's been to plenty of classes, absolutely, through co-ops and those sorts of things. So he's had the class instruction where he's able to still sit still and listen to your teacher, eyes up front, focus on what they're saying. He's had that as formal instruction goes, and of course with me. But he's never had school day in and day out. No.
Right. So what does he wants to do? Has he ever, have you guys ever discussed as to what he wants to do when he become older as a career?
Well, it used to be paleontology. So we studied earth science and we studied, I have a paleontology unit study that I am building right now for people who frequent my blog. And because of how much that we did together. But now that he has found Legos and Lego engineering, he wants to work for Lego. So now whenever he's online or whenever we're doing any writing assignment, it's the who, what, where, when, why, how. So who are the Lego engineers today? What are they doing? What are their stories? Did they have to go to college? Well, if you have to go to college, how do you get accepted? What's the path we need to take? And so this is a way that he can start thinking about, why would I take that extra writing class? How does that intersect with what I'm trying to do? And so through this, he's able to take agency for his passions and for his life, to where it's not that I'm trying to put anything in him, it's that I'm trying to bring what's in him out into the world and allow that to interact fearlessly. And as many times we want to hide that because it feels awkward and weird. But that's where he's going, is engineering and toys specifically. And there are tons of adults who make their way through there, but how can you?
Okay. That's interesting. It sounds like you also allow him to do a lot of the problem solving independently, because something you've just said to him, something you've just said, okay, we know a lot of adults go through this, so how can you go through it?
Right.
You know, I think that's quite nice.
That's yes. And sometimes he will take advantage of the time and not really be working. And so of course he needs me to be there with him to guide him and say, hey, this is what this time is for. But just that small reminder is usually enough for him to say, oh yeah, okay, I know how to use my time now. And he will develop that self-agency. But we have a lot of discussions around how responsibility and freedom go hand in hand. And if you are free to move and you are free to do things in your day, you are responsible for the outcomes of that day. And so if you're in bed at night thinking, gosh, I didn't get as much as I wanted done, then what you need to do, if you want to change, if you don't want to change, then that's fine. Blame everybody else. It's okay. But if you do want to change, it's your fault. Why? And it's not like it's your fault in like it's your fault sort of way, but it's more so, how can I take responsibility for these actions and move forward for that, right? Because again, freedom, responsibility, they hold hands. They're like best friends. So that's never going to leave. That's just part of our life. So how do we slowly introduce this as best as we can, right? We don't want to throw kids at like, well, now you're in charge of the heating bill, or anything like that. We don't want that. But we do want something where they, at the end of the day, no matter how much guidance you provide, the goal is for them to say, I did it myself.
Thank you. Do you feel that homeschooling prepare children to navigate the world out there?
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. Again, and just, sorry.
More than traditional education. Because you went to traditional education to navigate the world far more than the traditional education?
I can't compare right now because my son is 10 and a half, almost 11. But what I can do is I can compare others that I have seen who were homeschooled and are entering the world now. And if they want to go to college, they're going. But if they can find an apprenticeship or a way to be closer to the person who they're trying to be, they will find that way. The ingenuity of the kids that I have met is astounding to me. And so I feel that with us facing everyday people and us growing through everyday circumstances, it's a way where he can connect with the outside world and have more interactions with the outside world, whether they're good or bad. They're teachable moments. And that's what I believe creates the self-agency needed to navigate life as an adult. As for me, I was not very confident in my abilities, even though I got great grades. That didn't really reflect how many friends I had or did not have. It didn't reflect a lot of my creativity, where I really wanted to do art, but it wasn't very good for the time allotment, right? Because the school that I went to was a fantastic school, but each teacher was putting a lot of homework on the kids. So I would have, yeah, like 1 hour of English homework, and your English teacher would say, well, what do you mean? It's just 1 hour of homework. Well, it's 1 hour of English homework, and the math teacher needs you to do a half hour of homework, and the English literature teacher needs you to do this. And eventually it adds up to like 5-6 hours of homework if you're applying yourself. So I never worked with what I wanted. And it wasn't until I was older that I found, oh, okay, these are inside of me still. Okay, cool, right? And they've never left. So not needing to circle back to it, I feel like would have been incredible for me. And it was all me doing that, but there are other ways to come to the same conclusion, right? And so I feel like it's definitely preparing him in a different way than how I was prepared. And while the system that I was educated in, I don't agree with, the teachers, I still remember their names, and I remember the things that they said to me because of how much I worked hard for my teachers to get good grades. I wanted them to know that I appreciated them.
That's interesting. So it was not so much for you. It was a demonstration of appreciation for your teacher.
For my teachers, and of course for my parents. That's a big one that I should have included there, to get my parents to notice and see,
Right, that's interesting. Thank you. What 3 tips can you give anybody who is considering homeschooling their children or child and is a little bit apprehensive and anxious about doing it?
Oh, wow. Let's see. I think I'll imagine me sitting at a table holding my hands when I was 22, starting all this. And I would say first, connect with yourself. Connect with your why. Why do you want to do this? Why do you feel like it's the best for this particular child, for this particular student? Why do you want to do it? And usually that comes in waves. It's many different answers, but it's something that can really bring you back to center when, your child is frustrated at the learning process or at the creative process in general. The dog is barking, your baby needs something, and your husband just asked where something is, and you need to connect with that why for that moment, draw back and come to a center so you don't lose it or lose your cool. So first, get with yourself, find your why. And next, consider your own learning style and learn the different learning styles. Learn what a pedagogy is, how an educational philosophy can also be right next to your why. That can be your North Star when you're lost at sea and you don't know where to turn next. And then finally, I would say that no teacher teaches alone. No teacher in a professional setting would ever consider teaching every single subject alone, adrift. That's not true. I feel like every single teacher who is professional in what they want to do is collaborating with other teachers, getting ideas from other teachers, connecting with other teachers, finding a way to read the books by other teachers, finding a way to, just doing what we're doing here, talk about education with other teachers. And in that capacity, then you share these open perspectives with all these other members of your community, and they become inspired by you. And so again, it's just a cycle that completely feeds itself. So I would say, connect with yourself, connect with the different styles of education, connect with community, but connect. It's a big part of homeschooling because of the fact that it's not, the school has a gym, the school has a music room, the school has all of these different resources, and that's wonderful. But now with you being home, that means that all of these other resources are going to be available outside. And so taking that with you when you go to the other places, that doesn't lessen the learning experience. In fact, sometimes it heightens it. But how can you bring that with? So yeah, thank you. That's a really good question.
One more question, which actually just came to mind. Do you think that is important as a homeschooler, stroke home educators, that you connect with other groups in terms of socialization for your child? How is your child able to socialize? Because it's like saying that this socialization takes place in school, right? That's the said, right? So
Yes.
the fact that he's not in school, how do you feel that he gets his socialization skills?
Well, that's the thing. So I want to share a personal story with this. So for me, I really struggled with making friends in the short 5-minute bursts in between hallways. Usually I was somewhere in a class being told not to speak for 8 hours a day. Usually I was being pushed in the hallway. Usually when I was trying to get my books out of my locker, and all I was trying to do was just get through school and get good grades while I was there, because I knew it would help somehow in my future, right? But I would get pushed in the hallways. I would get called a nerd. I would, like stuff like that. And so it was not a conducive place for socializing for me. And a lot of the times that I was with my friends, we were at each other's houses and we were away from that environment. So that was the thing that I noticed when I was just going through, like, am I really the one who's qualified for this, right? Because it does take a lot of coming back around to yourself and talking to yourself. So when it comes to my son, again, don't try to do it all alone. You're not alone. And there are people in community who, when you collaborate with them as other homeschoolers, you as the homeschool parent, or as the parent in general, would want to see your child rise up. So I think you and I were talking earlier about how it's not the teacher who is to be blamed for the system. And each teacher wants to see their student rise up. Well, parents want to see that to the nth degree. We want to see our children really, really rise to their truest potential. Well, when you join in homeschool with other parents, the cool thing about that is, like, one of the coolest things is that you see that in their eyes when they look at their when they look at their child and you're in a class together. So we were just at an archery class, and these kids, one of them, she was a 10-year-old girl, and we were shooting bows at a balloon, and she finally got it after so many tries. And she turns around and she said, "I learned not to question myself." And these sorts of events, it was not only celebrated by her brother, it was celebrated by all of the kids and all of their siblings and everything. Like, they were all together celebrating. And so they're growing together, they're learning together. And so the same passion that's in you as a home educator, where you want to see your child thrive, it develops for every single person in your community. And as you dedicate yourself to growing that community, it just grows for each child that you come across, and especially for your own. So they socialize, yes, but they also cheer each other on. They also get involved in the things the other person's involved in, read the books the other person's reading, so they have something to talk about. So in that capacity, the socialization will look different than what you've ever seen, but it'll look different than what you've ever seen.
Yeah. Thank you. Is there anything else you want to say to us before we actually wrap up?
This has been such an honor, and I am so thankful for your time. And if anybody wants to find me, I'm at raisingseedlings.com, and the seed is spelled like my last name, SEID, Lings.
Okay. Actually, after, when I send you the link, send me information. I'll just put it on my, on the page as well.
Great. Thank you. I'm so honored. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much for actually accepting the offer to come on to share your journey. It's just been fantastic. And it's really nice when I do this program to see how other parents from different parts of the world, is actually home educating, homeschooling the children. It is just so wonderful to see, because, we could actually use it as a comparison, use it as a growing tool. We could use it however we want to use it. It's just wonderful to see. So thank you so very much. And I'm really grateful for that. Thank you so much. Thank you very much, Facebook crowd. I'll see you guys tomorrow. Take care. Stay blessed.